of over 5 lakh crore budgeted for 53 major welfare and infrastructure schemes last year, barely 41% was spent in the first 9 months of the fiscal year. Take the Jal Jeevan Mission, allotted 67,000 crores, it managed to spend an astonishingly low 31 crores in 9 months. The much-touted PM Schools for Rising India scheme spent only 473 crores out of 7,500. Most shocking of all, the Pradhan Mantri Anusuchit Jati Abhyudaya Yojana, meant for the socio-economic upliftment of scheduled castes, utilized out of 2,140 crores, merely 40 crores. This is not governance, Mr. Chairman. This is headline management. Where promises are loud, like that horn, budgets are grand, but delivery is conspicuously absent. The budget this year has landed with a thud, not because of what it contains, but because of what it omits. Behind claims of fiscal prudence lie a more uncomfortable reality. The Indian state is shrinking, not by design, but by compulsion. Government expenditure as a share of GDP has declined over the past decade, briefly rising during the pandemic before reverting close to the 2016 levels, driven by stagnant revenue mobilization. Tax receipts have remained flat relative to GDP. Disinvestment has underperformed, and non-tax revenues increasingly rely on extraordinary transfers such as Reserve Bank of India dividends, an unsustainable substitute for a stable revenue base. More troubling is the shift in the tax burden towards individuals, bearing a greater share of the tax burden than corporations, despite sharp post-pandemic profit growth. To elaborate further, in fiscal year 2017, corporate taxes were 3.2% of GDP, personal income tax was 2.3% of GDP. In fiscal year 27, that is 10 years later, they are projected to be 3.1% for corporates and 3.7% for personal income tax of individuals. So your revenue is coming disproportionately from the individual taxpayers. Fiscal consolidation since COVID has been achieved largely through expenditure compression, presenting necessity as virtue and compulsion as choice. Within these constraints, the government has relied on low-cost measures such as tax simplification and targeted incentives, but the budget offers no credible medium-term framework linking spending to employment and productivity. Capital expenditure is emphasized, yet weak demand, stagnant wages, high youth unemployment, compressed welfare spending, and inadequate devolution to states all persist, leaving India fiscally disciplined but developmentally constrained, without the revenue capacity or strategic clarity to deliver real economic security for the Aam Aadmi. This is why, Mr. Chairman, this is what I call an underwhelming budget. Now let me look at specific sectors. M.S. Swaminathan had famously said, if agriculture goes wrong, nothing else will have a chance to go right. And this, I believe, is as good a starting point as any. Mr. Chairman, it's high time we stop treating agriculture as some issue that will sort itself out, because 46.1% of India's workforce and 60% of our population depend on agriculture and allied activities. Despite agriculture contributing 16 to 17% of GDP, it receives only 3% of this union budget, 1.62 lakh crore, which is a 5.1% cut from last year's 1.71 lakh crore. Now, this underinvestment is all the more alarming, Mr. Chairman, given the existential threats facing Indian agriculture today. This sector, vital as it is increasingly threatened by climate change and misaligned farming practices. Nearly 2/3 of the country are prone to drought, and the toll of weather-related disasters has been severe. Yet the Fiscal Bima Yojana, meant to protect farmers, has failed. Flawed assessments and opaque settlements have reduced compensation to token amounts, 1 rupee, 3 rupees, 21 rupees, as your minister himself has acknowledged, turning protection into systemic injustice. Matters are worsened by cuts that leave the scheme at its lowest budget allocation in 8 years, fueling fears that new initiatives will repeat a familiar cycle of announcement without commitment, as seen last year when Gradley announced missions on cotton technology, pulses, vegetables, fruits, and hybrid seeds, all quietly faded with zero funding in the revised estimates. These announcements are like modern courtships, promises without commitment. That's what this government does to us. At a time when farm distress is deepening, the budget silence on revising the PM Kisan Nidhi disbursement speaks louder than any promise made elsewhere. हमारे किसानों की आय दोगुनी करने का वादा तो आपसे पूरा हो नहीं पाया। कम से कम उनकी सम्मान निधि ही बढ़ा दीजिए। पिछले 6 सालों से ये सिर्फ 6,000 रुपए पर ही अटकी हुई है। While there is an imperative need for breakthroughs in research and development and AI-driven agricultural technologies, paradoxically, funding allocations for agricultural research and education have dipped by 4.8% from the previous year's 10,466 crore, that's now to 9,967 crore, decreasing precisely when the finance minister is announcing new AI schemes. And frankly, Madam, touting a new AI app when the majority of our farmers can't afford fertilizers, harvesters, or tractors seems rather detached from reality, except of the virtual kind. Now, this budget speaks at length about crops from cashews to coconuts, yet ignores one of agriculture's most persistent concerns, pepper. Once hailed as black gold, the sector is now in distress in my state. In Kerala, which is one of the country's leading producers of pepper, output has fallen from 40,000 plus tons to 30,000 tons and is projected to decline by a further 28.7% in the foreseeable future. The uncomfortable truth, Mr. Chairman, is that our spice market faces such deep challenges today that if history repeated itself, the British might not even bother looting us for it. Next to unemployment. This House has had this conversation far too many times.